Hello, chess fans. Welcome to another episode of Chess Chat, a program brought to you live from the Rollstone Bank and Trust Studio at Fitchburg Access Television. I am George Meridanian, Program Director of the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. This club, the second oldest chess club in Massachusetts, meets every Wednesday evening at the McKay Complex at Fitchburg State University. And with me for this edition of Chess Chat is once again our award-winning director, Darren Dame of Fitchburg, recipient of FATV's prestigious Boulder Award in 2009. And assisting him on camera and also in the control room is our longtime Wachusett Chess Club member, Brian Bigelow. And sitting across from me is my trusty colleague, longtime associate, chess author, chess photographer, Wachusett Chess Club statistician, my co-host, Dave Kuchar of Westminster. Hello, Dave.
Hello, George.
Well, Dave, yesterday we had a major chess tournament that ended in Westford, at the Westford Regency Inn and Conference Center. And it was the Harry Nelson Pillsbury Memorial Chess Tournament. And we're going to be able to report to our viewers, Chess Chat viewers, who the various winners were. And we're going to be able to show at least a photo of one of the winners in the top section, the premier section.
Right.
So why don't we start off actually telling our viewers that Grandmaster Jian Chao Zhao of Allston, he lives in Allston, Massachusetts. He tied for first place. We have actually should have a photo of Grandmaster Zhao. He tied for first place with another Chinese player. Here's Grandmaster Zhao. By the way, we did a program 2 years ago on Grandmaster Zhao when he won the New England Open Championship in September of 2021. Yeah, we did a chess chat program then. But he tied for first place this year with another Chinese player who's not a master. He's only rated an expert. His name is Shanman Chu, who lives in Nashua, New Hampshire. Both these players scored they won four games in a row. A perfect score. So they actually won the premier section of this tournament, which had a total of 139 players. By the way, last year, when they had this tournament, was 138.
Really?
So they got one more player this year at the Harry Nelson Pillsbury. But I want to point out who the winners were in the other section. There were 5 sections, and among them, we had actually a player from the Wachusett Chess Club who lives in Fitchburg who won. But we also had 3 other players who are members of the Wachusett Chess Club who also competed in the tournament. But I want to actually acknowledge who they were. But let's actually go to the next section down from the premier section that the Grandmaster Zhao and Shanman Chu tied for first. Let's go to the under 2050 section. Those rated under 2050 played in this section. And first place in that section, well, that section had 31 players, that under 2050 section. And you know the player who won the tournament? His initial ranking was 27th. He was rated way below in that section, but he came in first. He won all his games, and he came in clear first. And he was Frank Wang, another Chinese player, Frank Wang, who came in clear first. Okay, and now let's go to the next section down, which is the under 1800, which is actually for players Class B and below. But there were only just a handful of Class B players who played. I think I counted 4 B players in a section that had, let me see the total of players in that, 22 players. 4 of them were Class B. Everybody else was Class C and below. It's amazing. But anyways, the first place in that section went to a player rated 1506, Aryan Shroff. Aryan Shroff, he's a Massachusetts player. I don't know what city or town he lives in, but he's a Mass player. And he came in 4 straight wins. He won clear first. Let's go to the next section down in this tournament. and this was the under 1,500 section, which is actually the middle of the Class C. 1,500 is the middle of Class C, and that section, the under 1,500 section, had a total of 20 players, and the first place went to a player rated 1184. This is an under. Yeah. This is an under 1,500 section, and the player who won it was rated 1184, and this player also scored 4 straight wins for a perfect score, and his name was Gabriel Jacobs. So Gabriel lives in Massachusetts, but he won it. But he was ranking 11th.
I bet he's young.
He has to be a young player, yes. This tournament yesterday was dominated by young players. Yes, yeah, it was definitely a young players tournament. Now, the bottom section was the under 1,200 section, which was had how many players? That was a pretty good section, though. That actually had 29 players, and first place went to a player rated 1051. His name was Bradley Rose, and from Massachusetts, he finished with 4. Now, I want to go back to the under 1,800 section, because didn't I mention that there was a player from Fitchburg who won, who was a prize winner? Right. He didn't come in first,
tied for second, right?
Yes, he tied for second place, and I will now find that section again. That section, how many players did I say they had that was in that section? 22 players.
22. Okay.
Now, I told you that Arjan Schroff won that section, but tying for second place was Larry Spencer. Yep. Now, Darren Dame, our director, has a photo of Larry Spencer.
You may have a photo.
Yeah, he plays at the Wachusett Chess Club every Wednesday. Larry Spencer lives in Fitchburg, and you selected a photo from the archives of, there's Larry Spencer on the left in the red sweater playing the white pieces. And by the way, who is he playing in this photo that you selected?
Ray Paulson, club champion.
Yes, Ray Paulson won the club Wachusett Chess Club championship this year, and Larry Spencer on the left is playing Ray Paulson in this photo. Now, let us actually show photos that we have, that Darren, our director, has, of the 3 other players from the Wachusett Chess Club who competed in the Harry Nelson Pillsbury Memorial Tournament yesterday. And I'll have Darren show whatever photo he has, and we can identify who the player is after. Okay, so what player are we seeing now in this photo? I think we see Sean Shu on the right, the youngster sitting on the right, playing the black pieces there in that photo. Am I standing behind him? Yes, I'm standing behind Sean Shu. He's 10 years old. He lives in Lexington. And he is playing, I believe,
Ray Paulson.
Ray Paulson again. Wow. Okay. Hey, Ray Paulson really gets around, doesn't he? Okay. So Sean Shu, who actually is now became an expert. Right. Just recently became an expert. His rating went over 2,000. Is playing Ray Paulson. Again, this photo was taken at the Wachusett Chess Club at Fitchburg State University. Now, here we have a photo with the player on the right is Michael David of Groton. Who's a very active member of the Wachusett Chess Club, comes every Wednesday from Groton to play at Fitchburg State University. And he's playing, the player on the left is a fellow named Bob Anderson, who's a graduate of St. Bernard's High School in Fitchburg. And Bob Anderson was a member of the Wachusett Chess Club close to 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. He actually graduated in the 1970s, I believe, at St. Bernard's. Yeah. So he's back. Bob Anderson, he lives in Northborough. Bob Anderson lives in Northborough, so he makes the trip every week from Northborough to Fitchburg to play at the Wachusett Chess Club. Now we have one other photo to show, and this is a photo on the left, sitting on the left, is Sean Shu's twin sister, Laura Shu, who's playing here. And guess who he's playing? Who is Laura Shu on the left playing in this photo?
The man behind the camera.
Yes, our man behind the camera, and also in the control room simultaneously, is our own Brian Bigelow, who, by the way, prepares our Chess Chat set every month for Chess Chat. So anyways, those are photos of our local players, our Wachusett Chess Club players, who played in the Harry Nelson Pillsbury Memorial Tournament. Now, Dave, you and I have selected a game from the past played by the great Harry Nelson Pillsbury, who, by the way, is the most famous chess player ever to be born in Massachusetts. There is no other player in the world that has the fame. Here he is. There's a photo of Harry Nelson Pillsbury, born on December 5th, 1872, in Somerville, Massachusetts, and he died tragically at the age of 33 on June 17, 1906, in Philadelphia. But you know where he's buried? Harry Nelson Pillsbury is buried in Massachusetts, in Reading. In Laurel Hill Cemetery in Reading. He never set foot in Reading. I'm often asked, how is it that Harry Nelson Pillsbury is buried in Reading if he never lived there? I said he's buried there because his mother was the daughter of a prominent and big shoe manufacturer in Reading. And that's why the Pillsbury family plot is in Laurel Hill Cemetery in Reading. But every year, the Massachusetts Chess Association has a memorial tournament in his honor in the month of his birth. And yesterday, again, we had this memorial chess tournament at the Westford Regency Inn and Conference Center in Westford. And we have a game that was played in 1895. Now, this is from a very famous tournament. In fact, this tournament that was held in Hastings, England, was the first major international tournament ever. Ever. It had the strongest field of chess players in the world.
At that point,
At that point. These players were the creme de la creme of chess. And when our 22-year-old Harry Nelson Pillsbury, this little Massachusetts kid, well, again, he was 22 at the time. He came over to England. They laughed. They said, wait a minute, this American has no chance whatsoever. You know, we are the strongest players in the world. We Germans, French, English, you know, we dominate chess. No American can even come close to what we do.
He wasn't even expected to finish in the top half.
Exactly. What he ended up winning the tournament.
Winning the tournament out of 22 players.
Out of 22 players, he won the tournament. He made a name for himself. In fact, that tournament in 1895, the Hastings International Tournament, made the issue of the Fitchburg Sentinel. The issue of Sentinel in 1895, on the second page of the Fitchburg Sentinel, had news that Henry, he was known as Henry, but the people knew him as Harry. Henry Pillsbury had won the great 1895 International Tournament in Hastings, and that made local news in the Fitchburg paper. But again, we're going to present to our viewers a game from round 2 of this great tournament that Harry Nelson Pillsbury played against the great Siegbert Tarrasch, the German master. And we've done programs, actually, Chess Chat has done programs. Here is a photo of Siegbert Tarrasch, who was one of the strongest players, you know, more than 100 years ago. He dominated chess in Europe. Okay, but this is round 2. Now, who had white in the game that we're going to present between
Pillsbury had white.
Okay, so how did he open his game against the great Dr. Siegbert Tarrasch?
The other thing we should probably say is Pillsbury lost the first round.
Oh, yes.
So Tarrasch, you know, again, like you said, he's coming from America. He wasn't expected to do anything.
No,
he had lost his first round.
And you know who he lost to?
Chigorin, right?
He lost to the great Russian master Mikhail Chigorin. And after losing to Chigorin, he said, "Hey, this kid is not going anywhere." You know? But he played Tarrasch, the great Tarrasch, in the second round, and no one expected him to even come close to beating Tarrasch. So he had white. How did he open his game against Tarrasch?
He opened with D4.
Okay, a good opening move.
Yeah, and back then I don't know how common that was.
Well,
didn't they usually start with E4 back then?
I think probably back in the late 1890 or 1800s, probably E4 was played more often than D4. But D4 cannot be rejected, because it's a very good opening move, D4. All right. So what Tarrasch responded with was D5. So we have now basically a queen's pawn opening. Both players playing their queen pawn up. So how did Pillsbury continue?
So he plays c4, which is called the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, so he's actually offering the c pawn. It's a gambit because
Right.
that pawn on c4 is offered
Right.
to black if black wishes to take that pawn right now.
Right.
However, Tarrasch does not want to doesn't want to accept the gambit when he
Right.
wants to decline it by playing e6, the pawn to e6. All right, which is a good move.
Yep.
Of course, by playing e6, we are shutting in this light squared black bishop here.
Right.
But again, that's a good option, declining the gambit. Okay.
Yep.
How does Pillsbury continue on move 3?
So he plays knight c3, developing the knight, putting pressure on d5.
All right. Okay. So he's putting pressure, developing a piece, which is always good in the opening. You want to develop the pieces as quickly as you can, and
if possible now, he's threatening to push e4.
oh yes, it does prepare the advance of the e pawn to e4.
Right.
All right. So to stop that,
Right.
stop that pawn to go to e4, Tarrasch plays knight f6. Okay, so he that's e4 square is controlled by black.
Right.
Okay. How does Pillsbury continue? What does he do?
So he develops his bishop to g5, pinning the knight.
Okay. So with the pin on the knight,
Again, it would be possible to.
yes, right. Now he is still threatening. Yeah, with that pin, he is now threatening to play e4.
Right.
So what Tarrasch does is break the pin by bringing the bishop to e7. All right. So now he's got two pieces. Both players have two pieces developed, two minor pieces. It is now Pillsbury's fifth move. What does he do?
Knight f3, simple development.
Brings another piece into play. Again, this is very important. Piece development in the opening. All right. So now what Tarrasch does is plays the knight on b8 to d7. So knight b d7 is his move. He develops the knight to that square. All right. It is now Pillsbury's sixth move. What does he do?
So he plays rook to c1, thinking perhaps that this file is going to open up at some point.
Okay. All right. So he's got a piece developed on the C file. Well, Tarrasch says it's time to castle.
Right.
And he does that on move 6. So he's already safely tucked away on the king side in a castle position. Yep. All right, it is now Pillsbury's seventh move. What does he do?
Plays e3, so he can develop his bishop now.
All right, okay. Now, as I pointed out earlier, black has a problem. His problem here is this light squared bishop,
right,
which is shut in.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is he going to be able to get that piece into play? Well, he chooses to play the pawn on b7 to b6, so he has the opportunity. He has two squares available to him right now after that move to develop that bishop, to bring that bishop into play. So now it's Pillsbury's eighth move. What does he do?
So he exchanges in the center. C takes d5.
Okay. Now, by taking with the c pawn, c captures the pawn on d5. This gives black the opportunity to take that pawn back on d5 two different ways.
Right.
He could take it with the knight. The knight f6 could take that pawn. That's possible. But what Tarrasch chooses to do is to recover that pawn with the e pawn. So he plays e takes d5.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So that's what he chooses, which makes the e file semi-open.
Right.
It's not fully open because there's a pawn on e3.
Right.
But he chooses that he wants to make it a semi-open e file. All right. So it is now Pillsbury's ninth move. What does he do?
So he develops his bishop to d3, aiming at the king side.
Okay. Good development. It would be very passive to play the bishop out to e2 in front of the king. It makes more sense to play the bishop actively on d3, aiming at the king, black's king side. Yes, that's the correct move to play. All right, so now it's time for Tarrasch to bring this bishop on c8 into play, develop it, and he plays it to b7. You can't play the a6 because it's controlled by white's bishop on d3. All right, the only move he had with the bishop is bishop b7.
Right.
Okay, it is now Pillsbury's 10th move, I'd say.
Yep.
So he castles.
So he castles.
All right, okay, so he's now safely on the king side. All right, here is how Tarash continues. It's his 10th move. He now plays c5. He advances the pawn to c5. Okay, which attacks the pawn on d4.
Threatens to push.
Actually, there's a threat maybe of pushing the pawn, attacking the bishop.
Yeah.
That's a threat.
Yep.
So what is actually Pillsbury going to do here on his 11th move?
So he develops the rook to the e file.
Okay, so he's on that on the e file. All right. So what does Tarash do? Does he take the pawn on d4 with the c pawn, or does he do the advance of the pawn?
Yeah.
And he advances.
He advances.
He advances the pawn to c4, attacks the bishop, and forces that bishop to move. Now, where is that bishop going?
So bishop easily could have gone c2 or b1. He chooses b1.
Which makes more sense. Because why would you want to put the bishop on c2, blocking in front of the rook?
Right.
The rook is there to try to open up that c file.
Yep. Yep.
All right, so the bishop is on b1.
But I guess one thing we can point out too is now black has 3 pawns against 2 on the queen side, so it's obvious what black is going to try to do now.
Okay, so black realizes his play, there is some potential queen side play here now.
Right.
So he chooses to play a6. What's the idea? Why does Tarash play a6? What does that move do?
So he prepares to push the b pawn.
It supports the advance of the pawn on b6 to b5 with the threat of playing the b4, attacking the knight. So that pawn to a6 makes sense. All right, here is where Pillsbury plays what on his 13th move?
95, and I've read or heard that this is like something that's like Pillsbury is known for.
Yes, right. You'll
putting that knight on e5.
If our Chess Chat viewers were to Google games by Harry Nelson Pillsbury, especially in games played with queen's pawns opening, you will find this frequently played by Pillsbury in many games of his where he played the knight to sinks the knight into e5.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what is Tarash going to do after knight e5? Well, he chooses to carry out his plan.
Right.
Remember, he has nothing on the king side as far as any king side attack. His play is all on the queen side.
Right.
So he advances the pawn to b5. So the pawn is advanced here. Okay, that was his 13th move. Pillsbury's move now. What does he do on move 14?
So he plays f4.
Okay.
So it's starting to look obvious that he's going to be playing on the king side, probably going for an attack on the king. All
right. So he's played that. All right. So Tarash now plays his rook on f8 over to e8 because it has no future.
Right.
This rook has no future. Actually, has no reason to stay on f8.
Right.
If it can get over on this file here, this semi-open file.
Yeah.
All right, so rook is played to e8.
It also opens up a square. His knight can go back for defense.
Yes, right. It does vacate the f8 square for the knight to relocate to f8 and further defend the pawn on h7 if there's any further pressure on that pawn.
Yep.
All right, so what is Pillsbury going to do now on move 15?
Plays queen f3.
Oh.
So it looks like he's thinking about perhaps bringing it over here.
Yes, right.
And then the bishop and the queen are going to be bearing down on h7.
All right, so he's already got an idea, got a plan.
Yep.
White has a plan here by playing the queen to f3 with a plan on a king side attack of some sort.
Yep.
All right, so actually what Tarash does is follow your advice and bring this knight on d7 over to f8.
So it's guarding h7.
Yes, now we have actually the knight and the king protecting that pawn on h7.
Yep.
Yeah. So what is Pillsbury going to do on move 16? What does he do?
So he plays the knight to e2. So it looks like he's got thoughts now of maybe even bringing the knight over to join
so he realizes keeping this knight over, he wants to bring this knight over to the king side to help in the king side attack on black's king. Okay, so the knight is on e2. So this is where Tarash decides he wants to sink in this knight into e4 because by doing that, he is threatening, he's got a triple attack on this bishop.
Right.
We got the knight, the bishop, the queen, 3 pieces, attacking a bishop which is only defended once by the pawn.
Right.
He's threatening actually to win a pawn here.
Yep.
Yeah. Because he cannot allow that knight to take that bishop in this position. So what does Pillsbury do?
Yeah, so he's pretty much forcing Pillsbury to trade off this bishop.
Yes, right.
Which is good for black, right? Because he wants to reduce white's forces to reduce the attack, right? So
okay. So he takes bishop takes e7. Now there are 2 ways to recover that bishop.
Yep.
We can either do it with the queen. The queen takes on e7, or the rook can take on e7. And Tarrasch chooses to take with the rook. Yeah. So the rook takes e7, if that's his move. All right. So it is now Pillsbury's 18th move. What does he do? I believe, yes. Yeah.
So he's basically decides that this knight's just too powerful.
Right.
On
He
E4.
wants to eliminate that knight in the center.
He takes
All right. And of course, black's next move is forced.
Yeah.
He just takes the bishop on e4 with the pawn. D takes e4 is Tarrasch's move. He now is attacking the queen. The queen now has to move. And where does the queen go?
So queen goes to g3, right on the same file as the king.
All right. He's on that file. Okay. All right. So Tarrasch realizes he doesn't like that centralized knight on e5 is rather unpleasant.
Right. Yep.
It's rather annoying to have that knight there dominating certain squares. So he says, you know, I want to kick that knight out of there.
Yep.
So he plays the pawn to f6. f6 attacks the knight, and as I see it, there's only the knight has only one square it can go to.
So he goes knight
So
to
this
g4.
is a forced move.
Yep.
Knight g4 is forced.
Yep.
It has to go there. All right. Now, is there a threat? Is there now a threat? What actually? It's black's move, but what is white's threat here?
So white's threat now is to just take this pawn because this pawn is pinned. It can't take back.
So that is a nasty threat.
Yeah.
But the knight on g4 with the threat of taking knight takes f6 wins the pawn.
Wins the pawn, probably, yeah.
Yeah. No. So the Tarrasch cannot allow this.
Right.
So he realizes he has to not permit this. So he plays the king over to h8. So he plays king h8 to stop that threat. All right. It is now Pillsbury's 21st move. What does he do?
So he plays f5. I think mostly to prevent black from ever, doing this. So he plays that.
Right.
And that pawn is stuck there now.
Yeah. But also the beauty of playing the pawn to f5.
Right. His pieces. He can use that for his pieces, right?
It vacates that square for the possibility of redeployment of another piece to occupy that square.
Yep.
So f5 was played. So here is what Tarrasch plays. He plays queen to d7. What is his threat? What is he threatening by playing queen to d7?
So he's threatening just to grab the pawn.
He's attacking an undefended pawn on f5. All right. So how is Pillsbury going to respond to this? This threat of queen takes on f5. He can't allow that. He cannot afford to lose that pawn. So what does he do? What does Pillsbury do?
Well, so he plays queen h4.
Does he do that?
Yeah.
No. Move 22. This is.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. This is move 24. White.
Rook f1. Sorry.
Yes, he plays the rook over f1.
Yep.
Now the rook defends the pawn. Okay, so it's safe. So this is where Tarrasch, this rook which has not developed on a8, now moves over to d8. He plays it over to the d file.
Seems like it might be sort of a waste.
Actually, what does that accomplish? Because they're biting on. This is a wall here.
Right.
White has a wall. The pawn on d4 is adequately defended by the pawn on e3.
Right.
So the question remains: why would he bring the rook over to the d file?
Yeah. Probably the c file would have been better.
Maybe the c file. Maybe to play on the c file, you could advance the pawn to d4 and support the advance of the c pawn.
Yeah.
Possible. You need help, though. You would actually need help to support that advance. But he chooses rook d8 as his move. It is now White's, Pillsbury's 23rd move.
Right.
What does he do?
Like you said, pushing the pawn to f5 allows a piece to come in here. So he plays rook to f4.
Yes. So he plays there. Okay. So rook f4 was played by Pillsbury. Now, here is where Tarrasch plays the queen to d6, which pins, well, it pins the rook. I mean, pins the queen. Yeah, pins the
rook to the queen, right?
To the queen, right? Exactly.
So if the rook moves, he's going to trade queens.
Yes, I think he would be happy if he could actually trade off queens,
right?
Which would reduce the possibility of having a strong piece involved in the kingside attack.
Right. Yep.
So he would be very happy if queens came off the board,
right,
in this position.
Yep.
So with the pin on the rook here, it is now White's Pillsbury's 24th move. What does he do?
So queen h4.
Okay, queen h4. All right. All right. So here is where Tarrasch, who had played the rook on a8 to d8, now plays the rook on d8 to e8.
Yeah.
He could have done that previously.
In one move, yeah.
But he now decides, okay, I probably should have played this the move previously, but now he plays it to d8.
Yep.
So rook has played d to e8. All right, what is Pillsbury going to do now? How does he continue? This is move 25.
Yeah, so he plays knight to c3, which is I think he's trying to put it on a more active square.
All right. Okay.
But you know, he's also there's a danger that he could get kicked off at some point with the pawn push.
Okay. Now, is it possible to push now?
I don't think so. I think if he pushes now, then White's just going to go here and then there.
Oh, I see.
So I don't think he can do it.
And also by doing that, by pushing and allowing the knight to go a4, that rook now attacks the undefended c pawn.
Yeah.
And yes.
So he can't do it yet.
Cannot allow that knight to sink into c5. Yeah.
Right.
So it'd be bad to push. It'd be premature to advance the pawn to b4, attack the knight, and allow that knight to sink over to a4, and then anchor down on c5. All right. So what Tarrasch does, he plays bishop to c5, d5.
Yep.
D5. He plays bishop d5. Okay, maybe to redeploy this bishop back here for further defense. I mean, he could play the bishop back here, the g8, further defense of the pawn on h7 for one thing.
Right.
Okay.
He'd probably be happy if Pillsbury exchanged it off too, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's kind of stuck behind its own pawns right now.
Yes, it would be.
So.
All right. So it is now Pillsbury's 26th move. What does he do? What does he do on move 26?
So now he plays knight to f2.
Knight to f2. That's very interesting. All right. Is it actually to vacate the square on g4 for the rook to come over? Or
that's a possibility.
That's a possibility to play that.
Or to bring the knight over to here.
Yes. Okay. So with the knight on f2, well, here is where Tarrasch plays the queen to c6. All right. Now with the queen on c6.
Right.
Now is he now in a position where he could advance the pawn?
Now he could push it.
Now he threatened to push the pawn to b4, attack the knight, and force the knight to move backwards.
Yep.
Backwards.
Yep.
Okay. So the queen is on c6. It is now Pillsbury's 27th move. What does he do? Move 27.
27 plays rook to f1, bringing his other rook into the attack.
So he wants to utilize that rook for the king side attack. All right. So now Tarrasch wants to carry out his plan of the queen side attack.
Right.
So he plays the pawn to b4. Knight's under attack.
Knight's under attack.
Knight has to move. Where does that knight go?
So he plays the knight to e2.
Okay.
He could have exchanged, but again, I think he's thinking of adding the knight to the attack.
Because he says, why would I exchange when the bishop is just biting on its, it's blocked by its own pawns. Yeah, so the bishop is is not harming White at all by staying on bishop on d5 here. Okay, so here is where Tarrasch has realized, wait a minute, I'm going to play the queen to a4, and now I'm attacking the pawn on a2.
Right.
For one thing, okay.
So we can probably say that he, again, he probably was overconfident. If anything, he's thinking he's just going to push these pawns and queen. He's not too worried about the attack.
Yeah, he feels he's safe. He can protect. He has enough protection over here.
Right.
That there's no attack here, but he's threatening to win a pawn.
Right.
And follow up with an attack on another pawn.
Yep.
So what does Pillsbury do in response to that?
So this knight back to g4.
Yeah, he said, wait, I'm not going to bring this rook on f1 back to A1 to protect the A pawn.
Right.
No, I don't need to spend time wasting time to protect. I want to carry out my king side attack.
Right.
So he plays the.
So he's got the same threat now. The knight takes here.
Oh yes.
He takes. The queen comes in.
Oh wow, that is the threat.
Yeah.
By playing the knight to G4, he is now threatening to take the pawn on F6.
Yep.
And if there's a recapture, the queen takes the pawn on F6 with check. And
the rook can come over.
This is all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black cannot allow this to happen. That knight cannot be allowed to take the pawn. So this is where Tarrasch, the knight on F8, now plays the D7, which protects the pawn on F6. Okay, knight on D7. It is now Pillsbury's 30th move. What does he do?
Now this is a pretty amazing move. He
Yeah,
takes
actually, how many? Yeah. Again, if you were to show this game to a number of players, I wonder how many of these players would actually do this.
Right, because typically when you're attacking, you're thinking of moving forward. You're not thinking of pulling pieces backwards.
But this makes sense.
Right.
When you realize what Pillsbury's plan is, he moves that back to vacate that. Well, he vacates that square for another piece.
For another piece, and he's also got his rook on the second rank in case this queen comes in.
Yes, right. It does. Okay, that's a great move.
Yeah.
Rook on the fourth rank, going back to F2. All right. So here is where, this is where Tarrasch realizes, wait a minute, I see the threat of bringing the knight into here, and I can't take the pawn on F5 as well. Anyways, he chooses not to stay on this rank with the king. He moves the king back to G8. He said, okay, I just want to go back. I don't want to be on the same file as the queen.
And I think he's also probably thinking he might be able to escape his king out in case of attack.
All right. Okay. All right. So it's Pillsbury's 30th first move. So now Pillsbury realizes, wait a minute, after this, he says, maybe I should protect the pawn on A2.
Right. So
and he does it.
Knight to C1.
Yes. So now he protects.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, Tarrasch chose not to take that pawn when he had the opportunity because he's fearful of an attack taking place here.
Right.
He said, so he delayed. He delayed it by playing the king to G8, allowing Pillsbury now to defend the pawn on A2. All right, here is now with the pawn on knight on C1. Oh, so now Tarrasch advances the C pawn to C3.
Right.
Now we actually have two pieces attacking the A pawn. So now he is threatening to win.
He's threatening to win the pawn.
He's threatening to win the pawn.
And he's also he's going to have a pass pawn soon.
Oh wow. Okay. So what is Pillsbury going to do in response to C3? I don't think he can allow that to take place. He cannot afford to lose the A pawn for one thing.
Right.
So what does he do on move 32 for Pillsbury?
So he plays B3. Attacks the queen, sort of keeps things blocked up a little bit.
Right, forcing now the queen to move.
Yeah.
Because now, again, we have protection. The A pawn is adequately protected by both the rook on F2 and the knight on C1.
Yeah.
So the queen now has to retreat, and the queen actually has only 2 squares to go to, or actually has 3 squares or 4 squares. Right. But this, why would you go in here, A3? Right. That would be rather insane. He plays back. He said, okay, I'm going to play back to C6. Queen C6 is his move. All right, it is now Pillsbury's 33rd move. Okay, so Pillsbury, another great move by Pillsbury.
Right, another one that I never would even consider.
No. But you have to understand the idea behind this move.
Right, so he plays H3.
Why does he play H3? What's the reason behind
I think he's thinking of bringing the knight back here.
Yes. He vacates, he allows an empty square for the knight to retreat.
And then he can push the G pawn.
Then he can advance the G pawn. Right. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, but a lot of players will not understand the idea behind H3. Yeah. Okay, but H3 makes a lot of sense. All right, so Tarrasch realizes, okay, my play is only on the queen side.
Yep.
So I'm going to advance my A pawn as he did, to A5.
Yep.
Okay. So with the idea of advancing to A4. Yeah.
Right.
That's the follow through.
Yeah.
All right. It is now Pillsbury's 34th move. What does he do?
So as we said, he plays the knight to H2.
Okay. And again, this clears the way for that G pawn to advance.
Yep.
All right, after knight h2, so Taras continues with his plan of advancing the pawn to a4. All right, so that's what he does. A4, okay. Now, all right, so it's now Pillsbury's 35th move. He
continues with his plan.
Yep, G4. G4. And of course, there's a threat of advancing that pawn even further. G5. G5 is the plan, right?
Yeah.
So what? But Taras says, okay, I'm taking that pawn on b3. A takes b3. Oops, that's what he does. And how does Pillsbury recapture?
Pillsbury recaptures with his pawn.
Yes, he recaptures with the pawn. A takes b3. Now here is where Taras must have thought probably a long time and realized, okay, you know, what am I gonna? My play is on the queen side.
Right.
These rooks on the e file, what are they doing? I mean, they're well. One is here for defense, but he says, oh, you know, I need this rook on e8 to help in the queen side play here. So he plays the rook over to a8, but this is a mistake. What he should have done to help further the defense on the queen side, his king side, he should have played h6. That was a better move to help in the defense against this attack over here. But he chose not to do that. He played rook to a8. No doubt to bring this rook down, maybe.
Probably to here to attack the pawn.
Oh yes, the idea is to play the rook down to a3 and attack this pawn twice with the rook and the bishop. Yes, that's his plan. He realizes he would love to get rid of that pawn on b3. All right, but it's now Pillsbury's 37th move. He continues with his plan.
G5.
G5. Oh, now, okay. So pawn is played G5. But Taras says my plan is to win that, put that pawn on b3. He plays the rook to a3. Attacks the. Okay. So now we have the rook.
Two attackers.
Two attackers on a pawn that's only defended once. Okay. Now, what does Taras do? I mean, Pillsbury do on move 38?
So knight G4.
Okay.
Continuing the attack.
Now, by the way, this pawn on f6 I see is attacked 3 times. The pawn on g5, the queen, and the knight. 3. Okay, and it's only defended twice.
No, 3 times.
Oh no! I'm sorry. No,
the queen, the knight.
No, it is that. So is that? So as long as the queen is here, it is adequately defended, right? Okay. So there's pressure though. There's definitely pressure on the pawn, but Black is adequately defending that pawn 3 times. With the knight, the pawn on g7, and the queen. Okay, it is now whose move is it now? What move is this now?
So now it's the 38th move for Black, and this maybe we can attribute again to overconfidence. He's not worried about the attack. He thinks he's got the attack stopped, so he just goes.
But does Taras now make a mistake?
I think so. Yeah.
What he doesn't realize, in his greed to win a pawn. This greed is going to cost him. He wins the pawn, but winning the pawn is a mistake. He takes the pawn with the bishop. Bishop takes b3. He should not have done that because, of course, Pillsbury's response to that is to do what?
Well, we should say, though, that now Black has 2 connected passed pawns, and that's
true.
That's very strong.
That could very strong.
Turn into a win for Black very quickly.
Yes, normally, yes.
So rook to g2 is what he plays. Okay,
right. He played rook to g2. Right, exactly. All right. So now here is where, actually, Taras is doing a little dance in the back rank here. He brings this is a little dance he's been doing. King forth, G8, H8, back to G8. Now he moves the king back to H8 again, right? So this is rather interesting what he's doing here.
Right, well, because he knows this is G file is going to open up, so he wants to get the king off.
I know why he did this. This is to allow this bishop to come back to G8, exactly, for the more defense of the pawn. Yes, so it now makes sense. However, it's maybe a little bit too late. Because he takes, Pillsbury takes G takes f6, and what Taras retakes with the pawn. G takes f6, okay?
And he could have retaken with the knight, and that might have been better.
Yeah, it may be better. Yeah. Yeah, but he chose with the pawn though instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now here's where Pillsbury is going to gain the advantage by doing what on move 41.
So he takes the bishop on b3.
All right, and of course black only has one move is to take with the rook. Rook takes b3, but by taking here like he did, guess what? This now puts the bishop on the b file.
The rook.
The rook, I should say, where the rook actually maybe was needed to come back for defense on the king side over here.
Yeah.
But now the rook is stuck over here. But again, we do have two passed pawns.
Yeah.
You have to consider there is still there's still potential here with two passed pawns. But after rook takes up b3, it is now Pillsbury's move. And what does he do here on this move?
So he plays knight h6. So
what is the threat?
Now he's threatening mate in 1.
Oh,
rook
there's
to
a
g8.
checkmate in 1. Yeah, well, the rook on g8 is mate.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, and of course that could have been stopped if this rook actually were able to have stayed on the a file and had come back immediately to a8. However, now with the rook, the knight on h6, the only way to stop this attack, this mate threat, he has to block this rook from coming down to g8, and he plays rook to g7. And that's his move. All right. So it is now Pillsbury's 43rd move.
So he exchanges rooks.
Rook takes g7. And of course, black only has one move.
Yeah.
He has to recapture. King takes g7. Okay, so that's what he does.
And now this would be one of those places where if you're watching at home, it'd be good to stop.
Yes.
Or if you're watching on video,
actually,
you could stop it and see
our viewers now can see the position on their screen. On the lower right-hand corner.
Yeah, and you could pause the video if you're watching on video and see if you can figure out how we should continue here.
If you were actually white in this position, if you were Pillsbury, what would you play as white in this position? It's white's move.
Because it's sort of looking like the attack is over.
Right. It sort of looks like that.
I mean, you could play the rook up here.
Right.
But then he's just going to come down here and check. And he's just going to keep checking, so it's a draw. Okay. So the game would be drawn. So have we given our viewers enough time to think? Yeah, I think so.
Okay, viewers, your thinking time is up. We're now going to tell you what Pillsbury played on his 44th move in this great game from 1895.
Yeah, so one thing to mention, from here on in, it's for a lot of the moves, Pillsbury's playing like the only move that either saves the draw or saves the game at all. It's like he only has a single move over and over and over again.
All right.
Or he's going to, he's two moves, he's going to queen the...
Yes, right. These pass pawns are very dangerous.
So what he does, queen to g3 check, he's going to sacrifice the knight.
Okay. So the queen checks the king on g7.
Yeah.
Now, let's point out to our viewers why this king cannot actually, it certainly cannot go to h8.
Right, that would be checkmate.
Be checkmate with the queen on g8.
Yeah.
Okay. And the king also cannot go to the only other square it has.
Right, because he goes here.
He goes check. And then is going to be able to win the rook, wins the rook, and he will stop any advance of any pass pawn.
That's the game, yeah.
So this king is now forced to take the knight.
Yep.
He has to take it, otherwise he will lose. So he takes. King takes h6. Pillsbury has sacrificed his knight.
Sacrificed his knight, and this would be another place where you could pause the video.
Oh yes, okay. Let's give our viewers more time to think.
So
what they see on the screen now is
this move is amazing to me.
All right, So what would our viewers do? Look at this position. What would you do as white? It's your move. What would you do? And we're going to show you what Pillsbury actually played, but you've got to think about this.
Right.
What would you play as white in this position? How to continue this game? Have we given our viewers enough time? I think so.
Yeah, because again, I think you do something like bring the rook up here.
Yes.
You're allowing time for
more checks.
For the check.
Check.
So
yeah, right. Exactly.
He plays what I think is an amazing move, king to h1.
Okay. Exactly. Great. All right. So
and that's if you look on a computer, that's the only move to win the game.
Fact, the only way to win. This is the only winning move to win this game is to play the king to h1. And here is where Tyrus realized, wait a minute, I need help. I need some pieces to help in the defense on the king side. So he plays the queen to d5. No doubt, probably.
Actually, I think the queen's actually here.
The queen was yes, right. The queen was always on g3, right? Exactly. Right. All right. So the move that Pillsbury played was king h1. And Taras just played on his 45th move, queen d5.
Because he has to, because otherwise it's going to be mate in a couple moves.
Oh, yes. Because actually what he's trying to do is be able to bring this queen back for defense over here. Right. All right. So anyway, so what did Pillsbury do?
So rook g1.
All right.
So now the threat is to simply go there, checkmate.
Oh, yeah, that's right, mate. Queen h4 is a mate.
Yep.
All right. So Taras, okay, he must have thought a lot along.
That's why he put his queen here. Was to,
oh, yes.
Right.
He went there, because now he takes the pawn.
Yep. Yep.
Queen takes the pawn, f5. Queen takes f5, so that stops actually, or it doesn't. Queen takes f5, but it doesn't.
So now that when he goes queen h4, he can interpose.
In fact, it's his only move.
It's his only move.
In this position, black only has one move. He has to block the check with the queen.
Yep.
So the queen goes to h5, blocking the check. And now how does actually...
And again, we can say that, so white doesn't want to exchange because he's down a knight.
This loses. If Pillsbury would exchange queens, this would lose the game for him because of these
easily
pass
pawns and the extra knight. Yeah.
Right. So what did Pillsbury do on move 48 here?
So, queen f4 check.
Check. And of course, the king cannot move.
Right.
The only move to stop the check or block the check is actually putting the queen on g5.
Yeah.
All right. So the queen now has to go to g5, and that's what Taras did.
Yeah.
Queen g5, and now what does? Of course, Pillsbury follows through on move 49.
Grabs the queen. Rook takes g5.
Okay. And the only move that black has here is to f pawn takes the rook on g5, attacks the queen, but again, black has threats here. In
fact, so black he's 2 moves away from promoting.
Yes, right.
All white has left is the queen.
Right.
So this is another position where you could pause it. There's only one move.
Right, yeah. To
save the game.
All right, let's pause it. Okay, we got the position paused.
Yeah.
What should you do as white in this position? All right.
There's only one move to...
There is only one move. Any other move...
I believe loses the game. Because he's going to promote the pawn.
So can our viewers find the winning move for white in this position? It's going to be move 50.
Move 50, yeah.
And there's only one move.
There's only one move.
And what is that move? What is the move that actually is the only move that wins this game?
Queen to d6 check.
Queen to d6, and the king. Okay, now the problem is the king has to move, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And if he moves back, then you're going to take with check.
Oh yes. He would actually the king on g7 allows queen winning this
with check.
And the queen will be able to stop. To stop this here.
Yeah.
So what Taras does, he moves the queen to h5. Okay, all right. But again, with the queen at h5, he's now threatening to advance the pawn to c with the threat of queening on c1.
Right.
So how is Pillsbury going to handle this move after king?
So now Pillsbury grabs the knight on d7.
Okay, all right.
And I
think it's a case of blindness. I think, for example, probably Taras is so intent on advancing this c pawn to queen to promote it to a queen that he's probably oblivious to what was before.
Yeah, I'd love to know what was.
Yeah, what was going through his mind?
I mean, was there etiquette back then where you just allow the checkmate to happen, or I don't know?
No, I think it's the case. There's a chess term called I forgot amaurosis. It's called amaurosis kakistica. It's called chess blindness.
Okay.
Sometimes you're totally blind to what's before you on the board, and you're intent on carrying out your plan of, he wants to promote the pawn to a queen in 2 moves, and he's oblivious to what's on the board.
Right.
He's only intent on seeing what his plan is, and he plays the pawn to c2. That's Taras's move. Well, he overlooks what does he over? What does Tarrasch overlook?
So he overlooks it's mate in one. So queen takes h7. That's checkmate.
Right. So queen takes h7. The game is over.
The game is over.
In 52 moves, Zygmunt Tarrasch has been mated by 22-year-old American Harry Nelson Pillsbury in the 1895 Hastings International Tournament.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could point out that, I mean, the only way he could have kept the game going would have been play the rook here, check.
But again, that king would actually be able to come up and avoid any further checks. The G3. Yeah.
Right. Right. So I mean, he could play the king up, and then maybe he could play the king here.
Yeah.
He's going to lose anyway, but
right.
It would have kept the game going.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's true. You're absolutely right. He could have actually kept the game going by first of all, not playing c2 for one thing, allowing the mate, but actually stopping any mate here.
But that's a sort of chess blindness, right? You look at this and you realize, okay, well, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Well, since that doesn't work, I'll just do this.
Just advance it and try to promote my pawn to a queen. Yeah. But it didn't happen.
Right.
He got mated, and again, Pillsbury won the tournament in Hastings, and again. But some of the players, he lost to Chigorin. We said it in round one. Yep. But Chigorin actually finished. Did he finish
second? I think
second.
Yeah.
So Chigorin was one of the top players of the world from Russia, and of course Lasker. He also played. Did he actually play Lasker?
Yeah.
Yeah. He lost. Actually, Pillsbury in this tournament lost 3 games. Right.
3 games. Yeah.
There were 3 games, and Chigorin was one. Lasker was another. Yeah. And I forget Schlechter. Karl Schlechter. Did he lose to Karl Schlechter of Austria?
He might have, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was.
He was
I know
one of the
there were
top
3
players.
losses, but despite the 3 losses, Pillsbury finished on top.
Finished first, so he finished even ahead of the world champion at the time.
Yeah, the world champion, Stein. Yeah, Wilhelm Steinitz.
Yeah,
exactly. So we have a little time remaining. I want to talk about Pillsbury a little more. I mentioned to our director Darren Dame, as far as Harry Nelson Pillsbury, the most famous player in Massachusetts. When he died on June 17, 1906, the Massachusetts Chess Association, on June 17, 2006, 100 years to the day, had a ceremony in Laurel Hill Cemetery in Reading, Massachusetts. That is where Harry Nelson Pillsbury is buried.
Right.
Now.
And you were involved with that, right?
I was involved because I was president of the Massachusetts Chess Association in those years. And I found out that Harry Nelson Pillsbury's gravesite had just his name. It had his birth year, 1872, and his death year, but nothing else. If one were to go to the cemetery, that's all you would see: a name, a birthday, a birth year, birth date, and that's it.
Yep.
I said, wait a minute. We have to let players know that this is the gravesite of a U.S. champion, the winner of the 1895 Hastings International Tournament. So I made arrangements to have a company in Reading, Massachusetts, make a stone engraved marker pointing out that he was the U.S. champion, the winner of the tournament, his birth date in full, date, month and year, everything. So that was done in June 17th, 2006. And again, if any of our viewers were to go and Google Harry Nelson Pillsbury, Reading, Massachusetts, Laurel Hill Cemetery, they will see the marker, the stone marker that is actually implanted in the ground at Reading, Massachusetts, and Laurel Hill Cemetery. So anyways, we hope that our Chess Chat viewers enjoyed the game that Dave, and I
that was
presented.
A long one.
A lot of fun presented, and we hope that we'll see you for the next edition of Chess Chat on FATV.